Uh, may I start, sir?
Sure. Please carry on, Deepak ji.
Respected seniors and fellow members here, good afternoon to all of you. I, Deepak Jain, welcome you all to this webinar. I welcome all the senior hairs, members of other bar associations, members from outside Ludhiana, Patiala, Delhi, and so on. Satvir ji, Subhash ji, Kamboj ji, and many more names which I apologize to name the desirable ones. Before we start today's webinar formally, I invite everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Let's take this time to connect with our inner self and to have peace and harmony for all the humanity. Be silent, please. Om Shanti. Now I request CA Anshulji to temporarily mute all participants so the proceedings can be run smoothly. Anshulji, please. Dear friends, I would like to inform that today's webinar is being chaired by President CA Sanjeev Gupta ji and Coordinator Study Circle CA Arun Gupta ji and Coordinator CA Pushkal Soni ji co-coordinator is with us. Executive member CA Anshul ji will take care of all the technical aspects. Moving further, I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, my senior, super senior, renowned CA Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji, a learned personality who will address the topic for the day, Section 148 of the Income Tax Act 1961. My dear friends, there is a lot of nitty-gritty in the past about the Section 148. There is a lot has been done in a very short time span, many changes, and we are very eager to listen Rakesh Gupta ji. मैं सर से पूछना चाहूंगा, the query will be answered in between as and when it arises or after completion of your deliberation, sir.
बाद में के लिए रख लेते हैं,
बात के लिए रख लेते हैं. तो काइंडली क्वेरी सेशन जो है अरुण जी, आफ्टर कंप्लीटिंग द डेलिब्रेशन अरुण जी जो है वो क्वेरी सेशन देखेंगे और पुष्कर सोनी जी. My dear friends, we are much aware that more questions and queries we raise, the more we are valuable for the whole group. क्लासरूम में भी जो बच्चा सबसे ज्यादा पूछता है तो वो जनरली सारी क्लास के लिए बड़ा बेनिफिशियल साबित होता है. So I urge each and every one of you to fully engage in this collective endeavor because it is a great chance for us to polish our knowledge about 148 and to answer all the queries which are very much disturbing our minds for a long time regarding the very section. Now, before proceeding to the deliberation, I request to Mr. President, sir, to have a welcome address to the speaker and to all the present. और संजीव सर राकेश गुप्ता जी की आज की एक बड़ी अचीवमेंट है, इनको सुप्रीम कोर्ट से एक अवार्ड बहुत अच्छा मिला है, तो वो सर से मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा उसको भी डिटेल में हमें सबसे शेयर करें सर, काइंडली.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Dear professional colleagues, good evening to all of you. Friends, after a very hectic and challenging October, where we tax professionals had to work against the clock to complete our statutory requirements of filing ITR, etc. And after that, there is a festival session. So now we must be feeling relaxed and it's time to learn something in this time. During this month, our meeting with the newly joined CCIT, Mr. Sina, was held by your bar. We met Mr. Sina to welcome him to Ludhiana. During the meeting, various issues being faced by the members were discussed and officers assured us to take up the issues with the appropriate authorities. We also discussed with CCIT sir regarding joint program for blood donation camp and cricket match with the department. CCIT sir were very enthusiastic about the same. A joint blood donation camp with the income tax department shall be organized tentatively on 12th of December in the next month. Friends, your bar always try to organize programs and discussion on the relevant topic so as to update the members' knowledge from time to time. Friends, topic of section 148 is always a very hot topic and used frequently by the department against the assessee. There is a lot of litigation on the same and daily new judgments are coming on the topic. To deliberate on this, we had amongst us a very learned and eminent speaker, CA Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji from New Delhi, who is an expert on the topic. I'm sure that after the deliberation with him, we shall all be more learned and be able to perform our duties in an efficient manner. I'm grateful to Rakesh ji for sparing his valuable time and addressing this study circle meeting in the shortest possible time. Friends, before I hand over the proceeding to CA Deepak Jain ji, I would like to share with you that Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji on the Constitution Day of India has been awarded a certificate of appreciation by the Chief Justice of India in the morning for his contribution toward the profession. I, on behalf of DTBA, congratulate Rakesh Gupta ji for the same. Congratulations, sir. With these, not standing with between you and the learner speaker, I'll hand over the mic to CA Deepak ji to take the proceeding further. Deepak ji, please.
Sir, Deepak ji has told me that there is some issue with his Zoom network. So now I would request Anshul ji to formally introduce our guest speaker. Anshul ji, please.
गुड इवनिंग ऑल। डॉक्टर राकेश गुप्ता जी, वैसे इनको इंट्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत नहीं है सर, मतलब हम सब इनको बड़ी अच्छी तरह जानते हैं। ही इज़ अ CS कॉस्ट अकाउंटेंट एंड एडवोकेट बाय प्रोफेशन. He has been a very meritorious student during his education period and has been attained meritorious position in high school, intermediate, during graduation. Also, he has been he has achieved first rank in university, and also during during LLB he has been achieved first rank in university. He has published 3 books on the matter of taxation, co-authored with his partner Dr. Rakesh Agarwal ji. As a practicing advocate, presently he is appearing in ITAT, High Court and Supreme Court. During his practice, he has represented very high-profile cases and attained wide media coverage and appreciation. He has been a member of International Association of Tax Judges and participated in meetings held abroad, like in Helsinki, Finland, and Cambridge in UK. And he has been invited to Chamber of Commerce and Industry on finance bill in Abu Dhabi and Bahrain. Not standing more between the speaker and the audience, I will ask Mohit to take it forward.
Sir, Rakesh sir, now it's your turn. The house is open for your deliberation, sir, please.
Thank you for the kind words, very respected fellow professional colleague. Now, reading the biodata is like the reopening of your past. Now, today we will discuss the reopening of the assessment. So, going deep memory of the yesteryears is very good, though reassessment may not be good. Friends, it gives me immense pleasure to be with all of you after a very long recess to discuss about section 147, 148. Though I am quite conscious, I know that many of my friends would like to hear as to what will be the fate for assessment year 15-16, where the escaped income is more than 50 lakhs. What will happen to 16, 17, 17, 18? But then today we have got plenty of time So we will discuss about certain jurisprudential issues also, because when the rationale or the justification or the philosophy is also told to us, then it gets registered in our brain. Friends, reopening of an assessment is not a new topic. It used to be Section 34 of 1922 Act, which when 1961 Act came into existence, it became Section 147, 148. A good taxation system is one where there is a stability and there is a stability, and the lesser the volatility. Section 147, 148, or for that matter, the reopening chapters of the Tax Act remained static with minor changes here and there for almost 100 years. But then the tsunami came, and tsunami came in 2021, and it is not stabilizing. So the topic of reassessment, which was stable more or less over the years, now has been destabilized, and that too in the name of simplification. We'll discuss that aspect. So that stability of the reassessment is gone, has been thrown to the winds, and volatility now has taken place in the field of assessment. I always say that our framers of law, our legislature, now first of all lets the law stabilized. When it is stabilized, then something is done to destabilize it. The other day I was speaking in Ludhiana on only last week or last week. Justice Rajesh Bindal of Honorable Supreme Court, he said that truly our government is welfare government, because it takes care of the welfare of the chartered accountants and lawyers by making changes in the law, so that more and more litigations and more and more prosperities accrue and result to the tax professionals. So the stability, which is the important hallmark of an efficient tax system, now has taken a beating, has taken a back seat, and the volatility now has become the rule insofar as the reassessment is concerned. Now, one thing which always comes to my mind, and which may be coming into your mind also, that what is so special about reopening of an assessment? Because our substantial part of jurisprudence is full of case laws on the reopening. So somebody can say that if an assessment has been reopened, then what is so big deal in it? But taxpayer, all stakeholders, whether taxpayer, tax administrators, courts, all, and tax consultants, all are equally worried, concerned regarding the reopening of assessment. Therefore, it becomes essential for us to know as to what is so essential, what is so big deal into the reassessment. I'll explain the underlying philosophy. The underlying philosophy is that the legislature has attached a great piousness, a great sanctity to the finality of an assessment. If the assessment has attained finality, if the assessment has become final, the law says that the pious thing has happened and its piousness should not be disturbed. So the philosophy, because of which everybody is concerned, is that if my assessment has attained finality, then it should not be disturbed in a lighter vein. And therefore, when it should not be disturbed in lighter vein, that makes all of us stakeholders, worried, concerned, and cautious. So this is the underlying philosophy, that is why there is a big deal in the reassessment. That my assessment is sought to be disturbed. The dust has settled with respect to my assessment. It is sought to be aroused again by way of the process of reassessment. and that finality should not be allowed to be breached. The courts have said that finality is very precious, is very pious, and that finality should not be allowed to be breached in a light-hearted manner, in a casual and cavalier manner. And therefore, you would notice that the legislature was conscious to have ensured that enough checks and balances are built into the scheme. Now, you can very well appreciate that there are certain checks and balances in the matter of reassessment, which checks and balances are there for the purpose of a much more draconian provisions of search. Now, you can very well imagine that the legislature has equated with the process of that investigative process of search. So, this is the provision where all stakeholders are so worried and concerned is because of this underlying philosophy of finality of an assessment being the supreme. Now, a question comes, and whenever there is a change in law, this question is always raised. Akhirkar, what has gone? After all, what has gone into the mind of legislature to have changed the law? And changed the law to this extent that there is a distinct paradigm shift in the matter of reopening. When we see the memorandum explaining the provisions of the new finance bill, because of which these changes were brought, and as a result of which these changes were brought, now the reason which was sold to us was that earlier regime of reassessment was very tricky, very ticklish, very cumbersome, very arduous, very complicated. And therefore, in order to simplify, now we are rewriting or reinventing the new law of reopening. That was the philosophy, that was the rationale which was sold to us. But everything that glitters is not gold. Reason is something else. You may not find this reason, but based on my experience, I'll explain the reason as to what has led to this paradigm shift or the rewriting of the entire law or changing the basic structure of the reassessment law by the Finance Act 2021. The reason is that very important check and balance which was there under the old scheme of reassessment in the form of reason to believe, it was causing lot of heartburn. It was causing lot of hardships, not for the taxpayers, but for those who administer the taxation laws. Because reason to believe was a phrase which was interpreted by the courts to have a definite meaning. And that meaning was that before it can be said that the assessing officer had reason to believe about the escapement of income, he must have material in his possession. That material may not be conclusive material, but there must be material. And that material must not be mere gossip, or rumor, or hunch. It must be more than mere or suspicion. And therefore, the courts said that there has to be material which must have the nexus with the belief of escapement of income, and not merely the nexus, but it should be the live nexus. Courts have said that if an assessing officer does not have material either in his possession, or even if he is having material in his possession, but that material does not have live nexus with the belief of escapement of income, then there would not be reason to believe. And then the assessing officers because under section 148 subsection 2 of the old law, it required of the assessing officers to record that reason to believe in writing. So this important check and balance form of the phrase or expressions reason to believe employed by the legislature in the old regime, which was required to be reduced in writing by the assessing officer. Now, this was causing immense hardships to the tax administrators. The assessing officers were not able to record reason to believe, or if at all reason to believe was being recorded by the assessing officers, it was not meeting the threshold as set out by the courts, and therefore all reassessments by and large were falling. That we have strictly to see the validity of a reassessment having regard to the reason to believe recorded by the assessing officer. Whatever has been recorded by the assessing officer, that will act as the ground on which the entire edifice of the reassessment has to be built. And therefore, the courts said that we have to see the validity of reassessment strictly in terms of the reason to believe recorded by the assessing officer. The courts have said, "Arey bhai, you are disturbing the finality of an assessment. Therefore, these provisions are required to be construed and interpreted very strictly. We will see just like this, not here and there. And in case a reason to believe recorded by the assessing officer fails to meet the prescribed or interpreted standards set out and interpreted by the court, then that reassessment may be justified on any other reason, but it cannot be upheld." Therefore, this was creating problem. So the legislature thought that in the name of simplification, because simplification is a word which is often sold by the legislature. So in the name of simplifications, the court said, कि रीजन टू बिलीव वाला जो काम है इसको हम लेजिस्लेशन में ही इसको हम डाल देते हैं. सो उन्होंने इस रीजन टू बिलीव को सबसे पहले चेंज किया इंफॉर्मेशन सजेस्टिंग एस्केपमेंट ऑफ इनकम, और इंफॉर्मेशन सजेस्टिंग एस्केपमेंट इनकम को एग्जॉस्टिवली डिफाइन कर दिया. And those 5 different instances were given as to when can it be said to be information suggesting escapement of income in case of an SSE. So now the assessing officers are not burdened with the burden of writing the reason to believe. Therefore, that laxity, that negligence, that omission which used to take place in the matter of the reason to believe, now that goes, and then it is substituted by a prescribed 5-pronged informations, and anybody can see whether the basis of reopening falls under any of those 5 exhaustively laid informations suggesting escapement of income or wrong. So with one stroke, the legislature tried to solve this problem which were lying more at their hand, and it has been solved. It has been kept in the cover of simplification. So this was the reason for bringing out this wholesale amendment to this entire scheme of reassessment. Now, having dealt with the rationale, the justification, or what has led the legislature to change or to make changes in wholesome manner or wholesale manner, now let us quickly, now we have got 3 regimes. The first regime up to assessment year 21-22. Another regime, rather not 21-22, I mean that law which was there till Finance Act 2020. Then came the amendment by Finance Act 2021 from 1/4/2021. There were amendments in 22, there were amendments in 23. And the third regime, which is the newest regime, that has been brought by Finance Act 2024 with effect from 1st of September 2024. Now, in order to understand the newest regime of reassessment, now let us have a quick recap of old law, the mid law, and then thereafter to the new law. So the old law, which has held the field for a few years, right from 1961, or if I go back right from 1922 Act, was that if an assessing officer had reason to believe that income chargeable to tax is escaped assessment, then he may, subject to the provisions section 140 to 153, bring to tax such escaped income, or bring to tax such income, bring to tax such escaped income, and also any other income which comes to his notice subsequently. So he could have brought even that other income also which comes to his notice subsequently to tax. So this was the law, and for that the assessing officer was required to issue a straightway notice under section 148 asking you to file return of income, and then take up the process of reassessment from that stage. There was time limit of 4 years and 6 years. I'm not talking of 16 years, 4 years and 6 years. 4 years if escaped income was rupees 1 lakh or less, and if escaped income or likely escaped income was more than rupees 1 lakh or 1 lakh rupees or more, then in that case the time limit was 6 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. There were certain other provisos to section 147, but then we are not going on it. Now, there were approval provisions under section 151 that in case assessment is reopened within 4 years, then the Joint Commissioner was the approving authority. And if it was sought to be reopened after 4 years, then the Principal Commissioner used to be joint. Then came the amendment by Finance Act 2021 to say that now before we, first of all, the reason to believe was omitted from section. Now section 147 now used to read that if there is income chargeable to tax in the case of an SSE for any assessment year, then the assessing officer may bring to tax that income which was chargeable to tax and which has escaped assessment. Then the second important amendment was made that before issuing notice under section 148, which was there under the old provisions, now SSE will be heard. SSE will be notified as to what is the information suggesting escapement of income. So reason to believe had gone. It was substituted by an expression that there should be information suggesting escapement of income, which is a much milder expression. And moreover, as I said a little while ago, while discussing the history, that information suggesting escapement of income has been codified in an exhaustive 5 manners. That if information suggesting escapement will be there, in case there is some information as per the strategy formulated by the board, any information in the case of an relevant assessment here in accordance with the risk management strategy formulated by the board from time to time. And if there is any audit objection that the assessment has not been carried out in accordance with law, that can be the second source of information. That if there is any information received pursuant to the directors of evidence agreement, then that may constitute information suggesting escapement of income. Any information made available to the assessing officer pursuant to the scheme notified under section 135A, or any information which requires action as per the appellate authorities or the tribunal or court's order. So these are the 5 broad exhaustive informations based upon which, but out of this, the first one is very exhaustive. That if there is risk management strategy, information is oozing or emanating out of that risk management strategy formulated by the board, then that itself can give the handle to the assessing officer to straightway pick up the case for reopening of the concluded assessment. So I was on this point that in the middle period law of reopening, the assessing officer now must have just information suggesting escapement of income. But then he was required to put an SSE to the notice. Now, before he issues the notice under section 148, because if you remember earlier in GK and drive shaft, the Supreme Court said that SSE should be put to the notice. SSE should file objections. Let those objections be dealt with by the assessing officer. And therefore, the legislature thought that this judge-made law in GK and drive shaft now should be legislated in the form of section 148A of the new law. And section 148 capital A, that if an assessing officer wants to conduct an inquiry relating to that information, then he was required to put SSE to the notice, giving him a particular time period to give reply. After considering that reply or after considering the material which is already with the assessing officer, then he was required to pass an order. And that order was under section 148AD. And the notice used to be called under section 148AB. There was a time limit for issuance of notice 148AB, and then there is a time limit for passing 148AD order. Now that 148AD order now would go along with the notice under section 148, so that the SSE may know at that stage as to what has gone into the mind of the assessing officer for reopening this concluded assessment. So the objective was very laudable. Now that law more or less has become identical in the newest law, which has come into effect from 1st of September 2024, except some time limits here and there. So, and the time limit, which earlier in the old law was 4 years and 6 years, in the middle law it became 3 years and 10 years, and now from 1/9/2024 it has been made to 3 and 5 years. So these are the broad provisions, but provisions, as all of us know, so we'll not discuss much about the provisions. We'll go deeper into the various facets and aspects, and then we will see. Yes. So another issue, which comes when we compare the old law and the middle law and the newest law, is that whether the omission of reason to believe and substituting it by much milder expressions of information suggesting escapement of income, whether it's good or bad. Now its answer is both. It is a good in a way, it is a bad in a way. It is a good in a way that the SSE also now becomes aware as to what are the basic 5 parameters based upon which, if information is there with the assessing officer, that he can then he can reopen the assessment. For assessing officer, it is good because he need not to record those reasons in writing, whereby or wherein they used to falter, and because of they faltering, the entire reassessment process used to fall flat. So it is good for the assessing officer also. This is bad from the SSE's point of view, because this expression, information suggesting escapement of income, is much milder. Its threshold is very low. Earlier, reason to believe, as I said, though was not defined exhaustively under the Income Tax Act, but then based upon the judge-made law or because of the interpretations placed by the courts, now that phrase had acquired a definite meaning, in course of time. And that used to act as a great bulwark before the finality of an assessment used to be disturbed. Now, you will be surprised to know that this expression reason to believe, which was there under section 147, and as I said a little while ago also, it is there into a much harsher provision of search. You may recall that in the matter of search also, that competent authority before issuing the warrant must have reason to believe as to the existence of one of those 3 conditions. So reason to believe is a phrase which has been employed by the legislature to act as a bulwark so that no officer or authority can act in an arbitrary or whimsical manner, because that competent authority in case of search, or in case of reopening or assessment, the assessing officer must cross the threshold of reason to believe. Only then they could have. So this phrase reason to believe, which used to act as an important safeguard for the protection of the finality of an assessment, now that has gone, and that has given way to a much milder expression, information suggesting escapement of income. So, I mean, this is good in a way, this is bad in a way, and a much more latitude now has been given to the assessing officers, much more freedom has been given to the assessing officer to reopen a concluded assessment with not so strict compliance of the conditions of reason to believe. So, I will leave my comments only to this extent. The next issue now which comes to everybody's mind is, now on the one hand, the legislature has said that since under the old law SSE was required to file return of income in response to notice under section 148, only then he used to be supplied the reason to believe, and at that stage that SSE used to come to know, oh, this was the basis on account of which his case has been reopened. So under the new law, 148A procedure has been prescribed. So the objective of 148A was that a reopening of an assessment should not come as a surprise to him. He should be put to the notice as to what is the material with the assessing officer, and therefore first response should be solicited from the SSE. First response should be elicited from the SSE so that the element of transparency gets increased. Objective was very laudable, but in practice, whether that objective is being achieved in letter and in spirit or not, that is the question which I am posing to myself for everybody's consumption. My experience of the department using 148A is that it is being observed more in letter than in spirit. Compliance of 148A requirement has been turned into a ritualistic compliance, that's all. Either the material in support of the allegation is not supplied. If at all the material in support of the allegation supplied, SSE puts the defense in response to that notice under section 148AB, then that reply is not considered objectively. So that laudable objective which legislature had in its mind by legislating the principle of GK and drive shaft now appears to have been thrown to the winds. And that is why you would notice that the incidence of filing writs against the order under section 148AD had increased tremendously on various counts. Sir, the material was not supplied. Sir, my reply has not been considered. Sir, the reason which was there in 148AB notice, the order under section 148AD speaks of something else. Time has not been allowed. So, on several counts, the SSEs are forced to approach the writ court against the order under section 148AD, and therefore my take is, and so must be yours also, that 148A process which has been envisaged and contemplated by the new law now is not being followed in letter, or maybe followed in letter but not in spirit. So this is a thing which I just wanted to share with all of you. The next issue, under the old law also, assessing officer had reason to believe that he was required to issue the notice under section 148. Under the new law, after 148 AD order, assessing officer is required to issue a notice under section 148 and asking in both the situations you to file your return of income. I always wondered, because today I'm quite conscious that I'm speaking before august professionals of very matured standing. Therefore, though I'll come on those nitty-gritties of 148, but then I'm talking on certain macro aspects also. I used to wonder कि भाई 148 का नोटिस जब भी आता है, हमसे कहा जाता है रिटर्न भरो, हम वही रिटर्न भरते हैं, इसका आखिर ये क्या चाहता है लेजिस्लेचर? ये कहीं लिखने में नहीं मिलता कि क्या चाहता है। लेजिस्लेचर चाहता है कि आप रिटर्न भरो, और मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस में क्या होता है कि रिटर्न हम या तो लेटर लिख देते हैं कि अवर ओरिजिनल रिटर्न फाइल्ड अर्लियर मे बी ट्रीटेड एज ए रिटर्न फाइल्ड। तो रिटर्न मांगने की आवश्यकता क्या है, क्यों है, उसके पीछे क्या ज्यूरिस्प्रूडेंस है? तो उसके पीछे जो फिलॉसफी शायद है और जो ज्यूरिस्प्रूडेंस है कि नाउ सिंस यू हैव बीन मेड अवेयर as to what is the material with the assessing officer, based upon which either the belief of escapement has been recorded, or now 148 AD order has been passed, which suggests that notice under section 148 should go. So if you want to income in your return of income, which you will file in response to the 148, therefore you get an opportunity to file it. But then the question comes, when you have to file the return of income by including that amount which has escaped assessment in your this return which you will file in response to notice under section 148, तो आपको उससे फायदा क्या है? तो देखिए लेजिस्लेचर का ये नहीं होता कि फायदा क्या है, एक्सक्यूज मी, लेजिस्लेचर का ये होता है कि that we want to give you one opportunity so that you can come with clean breast. So they are giving you an opportunity to come clean by admitting your escaped income. In case you want to admit your escaped income, then in that case your reassessment will end at that stage. But now what will be the consequence? The consequence will be the same. Now law is very peculiar. Like in case of a person admitting a guilt, now he says since he has admitted the guilt and therefore the consequence should not follow. It's not like this. Admission of a guilt is the best evidence against a person who is admitted so. Therefore, SSE may not stand to gain in terms of the tax, interest, or even in case of penalty, or even in case prosecution is launched. But to some extent, it can be used in penalty and prosecution proceedings. It can be used. I'm not saying that it will be taken note of positively by the authority or by the court to lessen the rigor of the adverse consequence. But as I said, admission is not the defense. Admission is a best evidence against a person who is admitting so. So the objective of notice under section 148 asking you to file return is that in case you want to offer that escaped income which has come to your knowledge or which was supposed to have been in your knowledge, to declare it in your return of income with whatever consequences remaining intact, you come. I am quite conscious that there is one decision of Honorable Punjab and Haryana High Court in the case of I do not remember the name exactly. It was the Rajiv Agrawal, Rajiv Bansal, and it is reported somewhere in 212 YTR, where an SSE admitted the income in his return filed in response to notice under section 148. The court said that in such a situation, the penalty would not be impossible. But then that is an isolated case. Therefore, I am not saying that that can act as a good precedent for the states other than the Punjab and Haryana High Court. But that can be made use of. So this was the rationale of notice under section 148 asking you to file your return of income. Yes. Now, when notice under section 148 used to be issued under the old law, or even now, there is a time limit which is prescribed for you to file your return. Like under the old law, that notice would have prescribed you 30 days. It could have prescribed any number of days. Now, after 1/9/2024, under the new law, that notice can prescribe you a maximum time limit of 3 months in which you are required to file your return of income in response to notice under section 148. Maximum. So the question comes that what are the implications flowing from such requirement that the return should be filed within such period? Under the old law, though the time limit given in the notice under section 148 say was 30 days, but return was not filed in 30 days, return was filed after 30 days, then the consequences would not be any materially different, in the sense that you could have been levied with interest under section 234A for the delay which you have made in filing the return beyond the time limit as prescribed under section 148. It would have led the prosecution also for not filing the return in time. But that return was a return which was valid. I'm conscious that many times in many assessment orders, the assessing officers have written, oh, this return has been filed not in time prescribed under section old 148. Therefore, this return is non-est. This return does not exist as if. No, but that is not the correct law. That is not the correct understanding of law on the part of the assessing officers. The return under the old law, even if filed beyond the time prescribed under section 148, used to be a valid return for all intents and purposes. The assessing officer, because section 148, old section 148 used to say that when the return filed now would be treated as if the return has been filed under section 139. In 139, there is a concept of filing belated return also. But I am not going into that kind of niceties of the expressions. So under the old law, return file, I am discussing the old law because there are many matters which are languishing at various stages of the appellate forum. So if a return which was filed beyond the time limit as prescribed under the old provision section 148, nonetheless was a valid return, an assessing officer could not have said that such a belatedly filed return is a non-est return or is invalid return. And therefore, wherever the assessing officers are, where the assessing officer under the old law have so held, they have dug the grave of that assessment orders, because based upon such interpretations, the assessing officers have not issued notice under section 143(2) in those cases. So if a notice under section 143(2) has not been issued when the return of income has been filed, which is a valid return under the old law, even if it has been filed beyond the time prescribed under section 148, then such a return before it culminates into an assessment order now was to be served with a notice under section 143. Now, under the new law, 1/9/2024, now the return is required to be filed under the statute itself within a period of 3 months. And it has specifically been provided that in case the return is filed within a period of 3 months, only then it will be treated as a return under section 139. And then the compliance of section 143(2) will have to be seen with reference to that timely filed return. Now, associated with this question comes. Now, if period of 3 months expires and SSC does not file the return within a period of 3 months, SSC files the return beyond the period of 3 months. Now, can an assessing officer say, since you have filed the return not within a period of 3 months, therefore I will take it as if you have not filed the return, and therefore I will pass your assessment order under section 144. To my mind, a return filed even after a period of 3 months is nonetheless a return of income, and therefore assessing officer may not legally be permitted to pass an ex parte assessment order or assessment order under section 144 merely for the reason that the return filed was written beyond the prescribed period of time. So, but then much can be said on either side. But then the very fact that the return has been filed, though belatedly, beyond the time limit, but nonetheless, it may not be written under section 139, but nonetheless, it is a return. An assessing officer cannot ignore the statements made in that return. And now, if you remember, under the old law, under section 151, there used to be an approval. An approval was much simpler. At least from 1st of June 2016, much simpler regime was made for the purpose of approval. If reopening is done within 4 years, then the Joint Commissioner's approval. If reopening is done beyond 4 years, then the Principal Commissioner's approval. Then all of a sudden, what happened? The legislature, in a quest to show much more transparency, made a series of approvals under section 151 when Finance Act 2021 came. Series of approval. Now, when I read 2021 Act, I was so amused to find that under the old law, they were not able to handle one approval. Now, how would they handle successive approvals? Because if you remember, under section 148A by Finance Act 2021, if inquiry was to be made by the assessing officer, then that could be done with the prior approval of the specified authority. If notice of hearing was to be given to the SSE, asking the clarifications on the information, that could be done only after obtaining the prior approval of the specified authority. Note, order under section 148 AD could be passed with the prior approval of the specified authority. If after that, if a notice under section 148 had to be issued, it was or it could be issued only after obtaining the prior approval of the specified authority. So, series of approvals were there. I was so amused to have found so many approvals, and my apprehensions were ultimately realized by the legislature. And after 1/9/2024, now again we are back to the square one, rather in much more simpler form that approval is there. Now it says, first of all, that is specified authorities which used to be as a principal chief commissioner or principal or the chief commissioner, principal chief commissioner or principal commissioner. Now that has been reduced by to joint commissioner, additional director. So there is a full circle. In the old law, additional commissioner and principal commissioner. Finance Act 2021, series of approvals by very higher authorities. And now from 1/9/2024, approvals from a much lower authority as compared to the hitherto 4 legislations. Now joint commissioner, because in the matter of approvals, I have found, and so must have been by you also, that the department has been very, what should I use expressions, laconic or very mechanical. Their contention is that it is administrative approval. And therefore, the way we give approval, even if it is non-speaking, even it is bereft of application of mind, it is approval. But then the courts have said no. The laudable objective of the approval is that this power of disturbing the finality of an assessment, whether has been exercised by way of this reassessment order or by way of issues of this notice under section 148. Now, whether the thresholds have been met or not, now it should be seen and supervised by the higher administrative authority. And since the finality of an assessment is sought to be disturbed, therefore, even this approval by the higher authority is not an empty ritual. There should be palpable application of mind. And in case the courts found that the approvals given by the higher specified competent authority in a mechanical manner, bereft of application of mind, and which does not show the due application of mind, then the courts have said this approval is not a valid approval. This approval is no approval. And therefore, in the light of this well-developed law on approval, when I found in 151 by Finance Act 2021 a series of approvals, that too by higher specified authorities or specified authorities of a sufficiently higher ranks, now it really gave me a very amusing situation. But then a result of, I mean, that kind of maze of approval is before your eyes, before us. And now we have gone back to much more simpler one approval regime of joint commissioner or additional commissioner. Now we have got two time limits. Earlier, if you remember, under 149, under the old law, there used to be two time limits, 4 years and 6 years. In the interregnum period by Finance Act 2021, it became 3 years and 10 years. Now, under the newest law from 19/2024, it is 3 years and 5 years. So first of all, because many cases are pending for the interregnum period at various stages of appellate forum, therefore we will discuss about the position of law in the matter of the number of years for which the cases could be reopened. 3 years and 10 years. 3 years if there was information suggesting escapement of income of any amount. So assessing officer could, after complying with the conditions section 148, then could have issued 148 note. But after 3 years, till 10 years from the end of the relevant assessment year, there was an additional threshold of that the escaped income or likely escaped income was rupees 50 lakhs or more. And this escaped income must be as a result of the books of accounts or the documents or evidence, which suggests that escaped income or likely escaped income is rupees 50 lakhs or more. And such escaped income or likely escaped income should be represented or was represented by an asset or expenditure or by a transaction in the books of account. Initially, if you remember, by Finance Act 2021, the only condition was it should be represented by asset. Then the legislature realized the next year, oh, they have committed the harakiri, that instead of that it should be represented by asset only, then they became wiser. The legislature becomes wiser in course of time, though they are supposed to be wiser all the time, but then legislature keeps on becoming wiser. So the legislature by Finance Act 2022 made two more threshold, that if it is represented by an expenditure or if it is represented by any transaction in the books of account or entries in the books of account, those instead of asset alone, now these two more thresholds were added. So in case of existence of all these three conditions, then the time limit became from 3 years to 10 years. Now under the newest law from 19/2024, now 50 lakhs of rupees or likely escaped income 50 lakhs rupees, and it is represented by assets or expenditure or entry in the books of account. So now this is the threshold. So reopening beyond 3 years, now up to 5 years. I do not know what has been the rationale. First of all, making 3 to 10 and then reducing 10 to 5, not even 6. Now, I mean, no clear-cut explanations are there. And it appears that because after all, legislature, when does something or does not do something, there must be, because the law is derived from the word logic, there should be logic. But I have not been able to fathom as to once having increased the time limit from 6 to 10 years, now what has gone into the mind of legislature to reduce from 10 to 5 years. But anyway, now it is 5 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. We'll come on the nitty-gritty as the law has to be seen on which date. We'll come on that. Then next issue. Now the next issue. Now it says under the new law or the mid law that if income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. If income chargeable tax in the case of NSA has escaped assessment, the assessing officer may assess or reassess such income or recompute the loss or depreciation allowance or other allowance or the deduction. Now kindly see, suppose I offered some income now which has been assessed, but because of its assessment as capital gain or long-term capital gain, 20% tax has been charged. Whereas it ought to have been assessed as business income, because at times the distinction between whether it is an investment or whether it is a trade is very thin, and that decides under which head this income should be assessed. Be that as it may, the assessing officer has assessed it under the head capital gain and imposed tax of 20%. Whereas the information as per the risk management strategy is that it is a continuous, a collective, a series of transactions done in an organized manner so as to constitute a business, and therefore it should have been assessed under that business, and therefore the tax rate should have been 30%. But then the assessing officer, but the assessee would say, now sir, on what basis now you want to reopen my assessment? Because income chargeable to tax now has been assessed. It is not recomputation of loss. It is not the depreciation allowance. It is not any other allowance. It is not a deduction. Therefore, the ingredients which are mentioned in section 147, I mean, they are not obtaining in such kind of a case, and therefore you cannot resort to section 147. Assessing officer would say, अरे भाई ये तो हम पहले भी किया करते थे, इसी तरह का ही लगभग मोर और लेस एक्सप्रेशंस थे फाइनेंस एक्ट 2020 से पहले के लॉ में। नहीं, एक जब एक्सप्लेनेशन 2 होता था उसमें था कि व्हेन कैन एन इनकम बी सेड टू हैव एस्केप्ड असेसमेंट, उसमें इलस्ट्रेशंस दिए हुए थे। उसमें एक इलस्ट्रेशन था व्हेन इनकम हैज बीन असेस्ड एट टू लो ए रेट, सो दैट यूज्ड टू बी an instance of income chargeable to tax. Now that explanation is no longer there. Therefore, the question comes that on what basis the assessing officer can now reopen such a case. My answer to that is possible only when, if the audit points out that the assessment of this SSE for this assessment year has not been done in accordance with the law. So, if the audit has not been done, or if the audit has been done in a perfunctory manner, that even this has gone unnoticed at the end of the audit, then the SSE stands to gain. Then his case cannot be, because the ingredients of section 147 would not stand met in such an example which I just gave, when income has been assessed at too low a rate. Yes. Now, Jiao Fao. one controversy, I mean, with which the largesse or beneficiary has been taxpayers in Punjab and Haryana's jurisdiction, is that Jao and Fao, jurisdictional assessing officer and the faceless assessing officer. These faceless assessing officers have created a heartburn also in the heart of the taxpayers and the tax consultants also. उस दिन मैं जब लुधियाना गया था तो मैंने कविता सुनाई थी अपनी, चेहरा तुम्हारा भी है चेहरा हमारा भी है, प्यारा तुम्हारा भी है प्यारा हमारा भी है, मुखड़ा तुम्हारा भी है मुखड़ा हमारा भी है, और दुखड़ा तुम्हारा भी है दुखड़ा हमारा भी है. So anyway, that is beside the point. But then the controversy, whether the notice under section 148 AB or passing of an order under section 148 AD and then consequent issue of notice under section 148 now should be done by the jurisdictional assessing officer or by the faceless assessing officer. Now somebody can say, how does it matter? Assessing officer is assessing officer. Now in what manner an SSE can claim to have prejudiced or have been prejudiced? Whether the notice is issued by a faceless assessing officer or by the jurisdictional assessing officer, how can an SSE say, sir, he has been prejudiced? So long as he has been given opportunity of hearing, so long as he has been put to the notice, that too of adequate time. Now the answer to this is that the very fact that on 29th of March 2022, CBDT, pursuant to section 151 capital A of the Income Tax Act, has issued a notification bringing out a scheme, faceless scheme of reassessment, under which it has been mentioned that the notices have to be issued by the faceless assessing officers. So whether there is a prejudice, ostensible prejudice or not, the bottom line is that the provisions of law have not been adhered. It is the cardinal principle of law that if an act under the law is required to be done in a particular manner, then that act can be done in that manner alone. And if that act is done in some other manner, the law does not condone the action or the act of doing it in that manner. I remember I argued this case before the Delhi High Court, and that is reported in probably 345 ITR. The name of that case is, I'm forgetting that name. That the case, the name of, I mean, the proposition was that if the approval was to be given by a joint commissioner, but was given by the commissioner, the department said, how does it matter to you? Arey, you should be happy that the approval has been given by higher authority. Higher authority under the law is supposed to have much more wisdom. Therefore, when much more a wise officer has applied his mind, you should all the more be happy. Why do you feel? But then the question, I remember before my Lord Justice Sikri, as he then was before the Delhi High Court, it has been reported in 345 ITR, probably at page 223. The name of the case is slipping from my mind. So I remember I coined these expressions. My Lord, if the legislature has asked a particular thing to be done in a particular manner, that means that any other manner of doing it is excluded. So doing a particular thing in a particular manner is to the exclusion of doing that thing in any other manner. So if in that case, the approval was to be given by the joint commissioner, obviously an inferior rank officer, but the approval has been given by the higher ranking officer, that was the commissioner, said that does not meet the strict requirement of law, and therefore such excessive applications of a vice officer, I mean, that is not, and that action was quashed by the Delhi High Court, and then thereafter followed in Bombay and several places. So this issue of Jao and Fao now has to be seen in this light, not in the light of a prejudice. Rather, I would say that I, as a citizen, expect a particular action to be done in accordance with the law. The very fact that very act has not been done in accordance with law is enough for me to feel prejudiced. Therefore, your theory of prejudice now should not, would not, ought not to work. Prejudice doesn't mean that unless some more tax is payable by me, you cannot say that the prejudice will not happen till that time. No, it's not like this. Prejudice can be in material form, or prejudice can be in abstract form also. I want compliance of law strictly in terms of the letter and its spirit. If that has not been done, the prejudice results. So the Delhi High Court has taken a different view. But your Punjab and Haryana High Court is still, and matter is subject before the Supreme Court. Now, earlier it was fixed for 19th of November, probably it has gone in December. But be that as it may, this issue, since having been adjudicated by all other high courts except the Delhi High Court in favor of the taxpayer, I have not been able to understand the rationale then of the board to persist with the issuance of notice by the jurisdictional assessing officers. And if these notices were to be issued by the jurisdictional assessing officer, then what is the sanctity of the notification dated 29th of March 2022, having been brought on the strength of section 151 capital A. Now we come to Ashish Agrawal and Rajiv Bansal's case. First of all, Ashish Agrawal, what was the issue in Ashish Agrawal's case? Because in order to appreciate the real meaning of Rajiv Bansal's case, it is essential for us to know as to what was the issue before Ashish Agrawal's case in Supreme Court and what was the final outcome. The issue in Ashish Agrawal before the Supreme Court was relating to assessment year 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18. And those notices were issued between the period 1st April 2021 to 30th June 2021. And the notices were issued under section 148 under the old law, whereas the contentions of the assessees before the various high court was that old law has given way to the new law on or after 1st April 2021. And therefore, on or after 1st April 2021, the process of notice under section 148 had to begin, since had not commenced, and notice under section 148 under the old law has been issued. Therefore, that process itself becomes vitiated. Almost all high courts, barring Chhattisgarh High Court, were with the taxpayers. But in Ashish Agrawal, Honorable Supreme Court exercised its extraordinary power given under Article 142 of the Constitution, meant for effecting the substantial justice between the parties, though it's very rare, though it's very rarely exercised power, and that too in the tax matters. I think prior to this, only once upon a time this has been used in the tax matter. So, Honorable Supreme Court said 148 having been issued under the old law, these notices, we treat them under Article 142 as if these notices were issued under Section 148A. So by deeming such notices are under section 148A, we are effecting substantial justice to both the parties. Now, Supreme Court, while deeming such notices, was irrespective of the year involved. Supreme Court did not see, while adjudicating this in this manner, as to whether, as on 31/3/2021, which year's cases were getting barred. So, even if a notice under old section 148 was issued, even for assessment in 1819 or 1920, so irrespective of that, the Supreme Court deemed all such notices, irrespective of any year, in a unified fashion, in a blanket manner, that all such notices issued between this period from 1st April 2021 to 30th June 2021 be treated as a notice under section 148A. And then Supreme Court gave 1 month's time, because that decision came on 4th of May 2022, gave 1 month time to the department to supply material, give 15 days time to the SSE, and then thereafter proceed in accordance with law. And one important thing which was mentioned in that decision is that all the defenses which are available either to the revenue or to the taxpayer under the new law, that will be retained, that will remain. So this was the sum and substance of Ashish Agrawal's case. And now, in the light of this blanket proposition of deeming all notices of all years issued between 1st April to 30th June 2021 as if these notices are 148A, now let us understand the decision of Rajiv Bansal. Because in Rajiv Bansal, now I do not know how many of you have read that crisp 2 articles which I and Somil have written, in which we have given one table also for calculating the time limit. And those who have read that table, I mean, we have received lots of appreciation from our fellow professional colleagues to make the tasks so simpler and clear-cut by way of that presentation. But anyway, in Rajiv Bansal's case, so let me reiterate the position of law that assessment year 13-14, 14-15, less than 15 lakhs. Obviously, since Supreme Court in Ashish Agrawal had said that all defenses of section 149 under the new law will apply, that means that in 2022, after the Supreme Court's Ashish Agrawal's case, when assessing officer passed order, 3 years period had gone, 3 years period had set in as per section 149. Therefore, all those cases had become barred by limitation. Assessment year 15-16, less than 50 lakhs, learned ASG conceded. On this premise only, that in July 2022, when most of the orders were passed under section 148 AD and 148 notices were issued after Ashish Agrawal, the 3 years period had gone. So if the escaped income is not more than 50 lakhs of rupees, therefore let us concede it. So learned ASG conceded it, and on that concession, and as per the plain provisions of law also, and in 15-16 with less than 50 lakhs of rupees, now that has also become barred by limitation. Now 15-16 more than 50 lakhs, or rather prior to that 13-14, 14-15 exceeding 50 lakhs of rupees. Now that in the chart we have shown that in most of the cases, the notices were issued at the fag end of June or May. Only that much time was allowable by the assessing officer after Ashish Agrawal's case that was available to him at that point of time, subject to minimum 7 days. There, the assessing officers in a wholesale manner have committed this kind of a fox pass, have committed this kind of an error. And in most of the cases, based on the calculations which we have given in our article, you will find that those notices which were issued at the end of May or at the end of June, most of the cases where the orders have been passed in July 2022 by the assessing officer after Ashish Agrawal's, then most of the orders and notices will become time barred. I will leave it at that stage. Now, I was on 15-16, above 50 lakhs of rupees. Now, 6 years time limit was there because Supreme Court had said that the notice of 148 issued initially, which we have treated in Ashish Agrawal's 148 notice from that date till the date when reply has been filed by the SSE. Now that period will have to be excluded. That period will have to be excluded on the premise that the time taken by an SSE under section 148AB for giving reply, now that under the proviso to section 149 is required to be excluded. So exclude it. And even after exclusion, a period of 6 years was there for 15-16. Period of 3 years had expired, and therefore, period of 6 years was this was issued within period of 6 years. Therefore, more than 50 lakhs of rupees, in my respectful understanding and submissions, would apply. But regarding the approval under section 151, my reading of Rajiv Bansal's case is that position of law in the matter of limitation and in the matter of approval will have to be seen under the new law as on the date when notice under section 148 has been issued. So if the notice under section 148 has been issued in 2022, at that time the new provision of section 149 and 151 having come on the statute, therefore, if the approval was to be obtained beyond 3 years from the Principal Chief Commissioner, and where the approval has not been taken from the Principal Chief Commissioner, because in many cases the department has taken the approval from the originally prescribed authority, there again those notices now are liable to be held as bad on this premise that the approval from the specified authority has not been taken in accordance with the new law. So far as 16-17, 17-18, the arguments are put by my friends in the profession कि सर ये तो 31 मार्च 2021 को टाइम बारिंग ही नहीं हो रहे थे, तो इस पर टोला क्यों लगेगा। उसके लिए मेरा ये कहना है कि टोला और नो टोला आशीष अग्रवाल में इन ए ब्लैंकेट फैशन जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये कह दिया कि ये सारे नोटिसेस 148 वाले जितने भी इशू किए हैं इन रिस्पेक्ट द ईयर, ये 148A के माने जाएंगे, तो वी हैव टू रीड द लॉ, वी हैव टू रीड द ऑर्डर ऑफ द सुप्रीम कोर्ट एज इज देयर, एज इट स्टेट्स अस। देयरफॉर ये कंसीडरेशन कि ये टोला में इशू हो सकता था या नहीं हो सकता था, मेरे हिसाब से ये बेमानी है, इसके कोई मायने नहीं है। दिस इज माई रिस्पेक्टफुल अंडरस्टैंडिंग विद विच माई fellow professional colleagues may differ, but this is my humble opinion. मुझे ध्यान है आपने कहा, मैंने आपके यहाँ, मैंने यूएस में था उस दिन, मैंने 2022 में मैंने अपनी ओपिनियन दी थी। उस वक्त वो मेरी ओपिनियन को ये माना गया कि नहीं, ये टोला नहीं पढ़ा जाएगा। मैंने कहा था नहीं, मेरे हिसाब से 149(1) के प्रोवाइजो, फर्स्ट प्रोवाइजो में टोला पढ़ा जाएगा। अल्टीमेटली राजीव बंसल के केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उसको वही पढ़ा। उस वक्त मेरे अम्बल ओपिनियन को लेने के टेकर्स बहुत कम लोग थे, बट एनीवे इट मे बी ए कोइंसिडेंस आल्सो, इट मे बी, बट एनीवे, सो इन राजीव बंसल्स केस ये जो डिफरेंट सिचुएशंस में, अच्छा एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट प्रिंसिपल जो राजीव बंसल्स के केस है, वो ठीक है, मैंने स्पेसिफिक ईयर्स की बातों को तो मैंने एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, लेकिन एक जो इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है राजीव बंसल के केस में, वो इस प्रपोजिशन बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है, और वो प्रपोजिशन है कि जब नोटिस 148 का इशू होगा 149 के हिसाब से, उस दिन क्या लिमिटेशन थी ये देखा जाएगा, और उस दिन अप्रूविंग अथॉरिटी कौन होती है नए लॉ के हिसाब से वो देखा जाएगा। तो 148 चूंकि समय समय पर बदलता रहा है, अब 3 से 5 साल वाला लिमिट आ गया है, तो जिस दिन 148 इशू होगा उस दिन लॉ क्या था ये देखा जाएगा, लिमिटेशन भी उस दिन की देखी जाएगी, और स्पेसिफाइड अथॉरिटी अप्रूवल के पर्पस के लिए ये देखा जाएगा। ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट प्रपोजिशन है। हालांकि ये प्रपोजिशन क्लियर था, लेकिन चूंकि अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट से इतना क्लियर राजीव बंसल में आ गया है तो ये और भी क्लियर हो गया है। तो ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है राजीव बंसल के केस में। तभी राजीव बंसल के बेसिस पर भी अब डिफरेंट हाई कोर्ट्स में अब असेसिंग ऑफिसर्स ने जहां 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17 के केसेस को भी रीओपन किया 31/8 से पहले, बिकॉज 31/8 के बाद 5 साल की लिमिट आ रही थी। मुझे मालूम नहीं पंजाब हरियाणा दिल्ली में तो बहुत हुआ कि इन पुराने सालों के 15, 16, 16, 17 असेसमेंट ईयर के केसेस, 14, 15 के केसेस भी ये मानते हुए कि 10 साल खोल सकते हैं 148 के नोटिस दिए। हम लोग रिट में गए और रिट में हमने कहा जी पोजीशन ऑफ लॉ एज ऑन द डेट ऑफ इशू, ये नोटिस सारे इशू हुए 29 अगस्त को, 30 अगस्त को, 31 अगस्त को। तो 31 अगस्त 24 को 149(1) का जो फर्स्ट प्रोवाइजो है कि जिस दिन नोटिस इशू हुआ है क्या उस दिन पुराने लॉ के हिसाब से ये नोटिस इशू हो सकता था या नहीं हो सकता था। तो क्या असेसमेंट ईयर 16-17 का नोटिस, जिसकी की टाइम लिमिट उस वक्त के लॉ के हिसाब से 6 साल थी, जो 149(1) के फर्स्ट प्रोवाइजो में उसको रिटेन किया गया है, तो क्या उसकी 6 साल की लिमिट 2023 को खत्म हो गई, असेसमेंट ईयर 17-18 की लिमिट 31 मार्च 2024 को खत्म हो गई, तो क्या वो 29 अगस्त 24 को इश्यू हो सकता था? नहीं। 30 अगस्त को हो सकता था? नहीं। तो बहुत सारे डिसीजंस हैं दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट के, अब मंजू सोमानी उसमें से एक है, राजीव बंसल के हिसाब से भी ये केस नहीं हो सकते थे। तो ये राजीव बंसल और आशीष अग्रवाल के केस का जो इंटरप्ले है, मैं ये चाहता था कि मैं अपना जो है, और भी बहुत सारे मुद्दे हैं नए लॉ पुराने लॉ में, लेकिन अब 7:30 हो चुके हैं। जैसे मुद्दा है कि क्या चेंज ऑफ ओपिनियन ऑन द सेम सेट ऑफ फैक्ट्स क्या अभी भी वैलिड है ये प्रिंसिपल? क्या प्रिंसिपल रेनबैक्सी और जेट एयरवेज का जो प्रिंसिपल था कि जिस इश्यू के लिए केस खोला गया है उस पर तो कोई एडिशन ना हो, क्या किसी और मुद्दे पर एडिशन हो सकती है, क्या वो खुला हुआ है या कुछ उसमें चेंज आया है? तो ये क्या पावर ऑफ रिव्यू संभव है? तो ये सारे इश्यूज हैं जो हैं, लेकिन अब चूंकि 7:30 हो गए हैं और बताया था मोहित जी ने और गुप्ता सर ने कि हम कुछ प्रश्न उत्तर के लिए भी छोड़ेंगे, और शादियों का सीजन भी है तो कुछ देखते हैं, टाइम बचेगा तो मैं जाने में यूज करूंगा उसको, क्योंकि मुझे तो अभी फरीदाबाद भी जाना है, 1-1.5 घंटा लगेगा फरीदाबाद तक पहुंचने में। तो सर मैं आप सभी लोगों को हृदय से धन्यवाद देता हूं कि आपने बड़े मनोयोग से मुझे सुना। अब कोई प्रश्न हो आपके, आप बताइएगा सर।
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your such a detailed discussion on Section 148. You have
सर कुछ
broken the
चैट में भी
all
मैं
issues.
प्रश्न देख रहा हूँ।
हाँ जी सर, वही ले रहे हैं, वही ले रहे
अच्छा
हैं। हाँ, तो अपना अनम्यूट कर दें। कंबोज साहब को, कंबोज साहब के कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं।
अच्छा,
उसको अनम्यूट कर दें कंबोज सर को।
नहीं जी, पहले जो चैट में है पहले उनको ले
सर
लेते
वही
हैं
ले
सर।
रहे हैं, वही ले रहे हैं। कंबोज साहब के कुछ चैट में क्वेश्चंस हैं, वो खुद ही पूछ लेंगे।
हाँ, तो ये पहले यार डिस्ट्रिक्ट टैक्स बाय टू एवरीवन द मीटिंग इज बीइंग रिकॉर्ड। अच्छा, एक ये विजय पुरोहित साहब से शुरू हो रहा है मेरा चैट बॉक्स तो।
हाँ जी सर।
If the assessee is not aware of initial Section 148 inquiry letter and within 15 days assessment is reopened, what is the recourse available to the assessee?
If the assessee is not aware of initial 148 inquiry
लेकिन
letter,
148 ए की बात कर रहे हैं ये कि
148 डे
148
की बात कर रहे हैं, विद इन 15 डेज असेसमेंट इज रीओपन, व्हाट इज द रिकॉर्ड्स अवेलेबल टू द एसएससी? देखिए एसएससी का रिकॉर्ड्स, अब एसएससी को मालूम नहीं पड़ा, उसके कई कारण हो सकते हैं कि उन्होंने नोटिस जिस मेल पर भेजा वो एसएससी की मेल ना हो, तो यदि प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस का अभाव हुआ है तो एसएससी कैन फाइल रिट ऑल्सो. इफ एसएससी डज नॉट फाइल रिट, then SSC can join the reassessment proceeding and then can agitate it by way of an appeal.
Okay. Next question.
हाँ.
This is Sunil Dutt sir का है. During the assessment proceedings under section 148, can the AO raise issues other than the main issue of escaping income? वही जो आपने बोला कि भाई
हाँ.
other than the main issue वो जा सकते कि नहीं, तो इसका सर थोड़ा सा कर लो डिस्कस.
देखो ऐसा है, ये बड़ा ही कंटेंशियस इशू है अंडर ओल्ड लॉ भी और अंडर द न्यू लॉ भी. Once, because the law is like this, once the reassessment has begun in accordance with law, then the assessing officers jurisdiction to ask questions cannot be limited. हाँ, jurisdiction to make addition in respect of any other issue is there, and for that the burden is on the assessing officer that this is also escaped income. But no assessee can say कि साहब आपने 143(2) में या 142(1) में मुझसे पूछा है, मैं नहीं देता. अब आपके इंफॉर्मेशन देने से उसमें से कुछ निकाल कर और फिर एस्केप इनकम और ऑन एनी अदर इश्यू वो निकाले, बट बर्डन इस केस में उसके ऊपर. मुझे याद है एक केस मैंने आर्ग्यू किया था प्रदीप गुप्ता, हमारे प्रदीप गोयल जी बरनाला वाले वो नहीं, प्रदीप गुप्ता दिल्ली में है. तो उस केस में भी यही हुआ था कि एसेसिंग ऑफिसर ने पूछना शुरू किया और नहीं, उस केस में नहीं था, किसी और केस में, मुझे ध्यान नहीं आ रहा. हाँ, मतलब बर्डन टू प्रूव और बर्डन टू मेक एडिशन ऑन एनी अदर इशू इज ऑन द शोल्डर्स ऑफ द एसेसिंग ऑफिसर, बट मटेरियल देना ये एसएससी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, उसमें से चाहे वो निकाले. हाँ, प्रदीप गुप्ता के केस में ही था कि mere inability of an SSE to discharge his onus should not cloth the assessing officer with the power to make addition on. Suppose assessing officer मुझसे मांगता है, अच्छा आप बताइए आपके पास और कौन से लोन लिए हैं आपने, मैं डिटेल दे देता हूं, आइडेंटिटी कैपेसिटी जेन्युइननेस प्रूव नहीं कर पाता, तो माई इनेबिलिटी शुड नॉट लीड टू एडिशन इन रीअसेसमेंट if this was not the reason for reopening. लेकिन this distinction is very thin, is almost blurred. So you take it that the assessing officer is entitled to issue notice under section 142(1), can ask for the informations, can dig out the informations that on which other accounts the income has escaped assessment, and then he can make additions. But obviously the burden will be resting on his shoulders to prove that this is also the income which has also escaped assessment.
सर इसमें कुछ मतलब कुछ जजमेंट ऐसे भी थी कि अगर जिस पॉइंट पर ये ओपन हुआ है, अगर उस पर एडिशन नहीं हुई फिर किसी और पर नहीं हो सकती.
वो रेनबैक्सी और जेट एयरवेज के केसेस हैं.
तो वो तो मेरे ख्याल सबने एक सिमिलर सा डिसीजन दिया कि इफ द मेन इशू ऑन विच द केस.
लेकिन अब आप यदि 147 का जो प्रोवाइजो है ना, अब जो नए लॉ में है, वो बड़ा कनिंगली क्लेवरली वर्ड कर दिया है.
ओके.
हाँ, पहले क्या होता था, पहले वर्डिंग्स थी 147 में कि असेसिंग ऑफिसर कैन आल्सो ब्रिंग टू टैक्स एनी अदर इनकम.
आल्सो, यस एब्सोल्युटली,
ठीक है ना. तो आल्सो वाज इंटरप्रेटेड बाय द कोर्ट्स कि भाई लेजिस्लेचर इज नॉट एक्सपेक्टेड टू यूज द सरप्लसेजेस. Legislature uses the expressions which have got meaning. So also word shows कि first of all there should be addition in respect of that basic escaped income. Then only he assumes jurisdiction. लेकिन अब explanation जो अब ऐड किया हुआ है नए लॉ में 2021 से, और जो नए लॉ में न्यूएस्ट लॉ में भी सेम है, उन्होंने कहा है, एक तो ऑल्सो वर्ड हटा दिया उन्होंने कहा है कि फॉर द पर्पज ऑफ असेसमेंट, रीअसेसमेंट और रिकम्प्यूटेशन, AO may assess or reassess the income in respect of any issue. उन्होंने बोल दिया any issue which has escaped assessment. Any issue. तो ये उन्होंने बड़ा ही क्लेवरली.
सब तो वही सब अनसेटल हो गया ना दोबारा से. फिर केसेस आएंगे, फिर जजमेंट्स आएंगे, फिर
अरे हमारे देखो राजीव अग्रवाल जी बरेली से देख रहे हैं, कितनी अच्छी बात है, इतने दिनों में देखने को मिल गया हमको हमें।
So
हाँ
next question.
हाँ जी, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन।
AO is supposed to the AO is supposed to give material relating to matter reopening the assessment while issuing notice under section 143(2). Section 148A is not to be followed in such cases.
Yes.
However, if AO gives the material in 142(1), can the notice be treated as invalid or can it be contested?
No. Notice he is to give you the material. May not be with any notice.
Right.
ठीक है ना?
The Finance Act 24 has not changed the time limit to 3 oblique 5 years. At the same time, Section 149 also prescribes a time limit of 3 years, 3 months, and 5 years, 3 months. What is this anomaly?
नहीं, ये एनामली नहीं है। इनफैक्ट 148 AD का ऑर्डर पास करने के लिए उन्होंने 3 महीने का टाइम दिया है। तो अब 31 मार्च सपोज असेसमेंट ईयर हम ले लेते हैं 21-22 का केस 3 साल के अंदर आपको, यानी कि 31 मार्च 2025 तक वो आपको 148 AD का नोटिस देगा, और उसके लिए 148 AD का ऑर्डर पास करने के लिए उसको टाइम है। 148 AD का ऑर्डर पास सपोज उसने 2 महीने में किया, ठीक है, वो कर सकता है। तो इसलिए उसके बाद ही 148 का नोटिस इश्यू होगा, इसलिए वो 5 साल 3 महीने और 3 साल 3 महीने का समय 148 के लिए रखा है। ये एनामोली नहीं है।
सर एक ना कुछ एक क्वेरी हमारे पास पहले आई थी, मैंने आपको फोन पर भी रिक्वेस्ट किया था, जो ओमेक्स के केसेस के रिलेटेड।
सर अभी आते हैं, मुझे वो ध्यान नहीं है सर, अभी ये पहले इसको कर लेते हैं सर।
ओके सर, इज द रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी बाय द बोर्ड इज इन पब्लिक डोमेन?
ये नहीं है, ये बड़ा वो है, ये पब्लिक डोमेन में नहीं है। नहीं है तो नहीं है, वैसे होना चाहिए। मतलब इसमें लुका छिपी का खेल क्यों हो रहा है?
ओके सुभाष जैन जी की क्वेरी है, फॉर असेसमेंट ईयर 18-19 इन केस अ ऑर्डर अंडर सेक्शन 148A
ये क्या है सुनील दत्त जैन साहब का? ये भी है ना?
ये मेरे ख्याल हो गया कवर उसमें।
अच्छा ठीक है
आपके
सर।
उसमें हाँ जी।
हाँ।
In for 18-19 in case a order under section 148AD and the notice under section 148 is issued on 7th April 22 with sanction of PCIT by taking shelter of extended period of 5th and 6th proviso section 149. Will this also extend the period of assessment under section 153(2), that is to make assessment 12 months after the end of financial year in which the notice is issued? That is up to 31st March 24, or limitation expires on 31st March 23 only.
Yes. Because 153(2) में जो टाइम लिमिट देखेंगे ना, that has been linked with the date of the service of a notice under section 148. ठीक है ना?
Okay.
हाँ।
एक कंबोज सर की क्वेरी है, सर इज द अप्रूवल अंडर सेक्शन 151 टू अ कंपनी under section 148AD and notice under section 148?
Sir, it should ordinarily and ideally be accompanied, but then if it is not accompanied, it does not vitiate the order. I mean, you can always ask under RTI, or you can very well ask it.
Okay, sir, somebody has written silver line case.
Silver line case was the case which was argued by me in Delhi High Court, but then it was not on the basis of this. I do not know why Mittal Sahib has written the silver line.
Okay. With effect
that
from
was on the proposition that even in case of 148, if the return has been filed either by way of a letter or by filing a return, then 143(2) issuance is a must.
Okay. With effect from 1st April 22, approval to issue notice under section 148 is not required if the order under section 148A(D) has been passed with approval. Now, in this case, if notice is still issued after approval, is this a valid notice?
Sir, this has always engaged the attention. Now, again, it is an application of, so anything which has been done in excess, you ignore it. So if, I mean, approval was not required, approval has been given. So one way of looking the things is that since that approval was not required in law, therefore it is invalid. Ignore it.
Sir, is board will issue any SOP after Rajiv Bansal's case to streamline its application?
अभी तक तो कुछ नहीं आया है sir. We are waiting for it.
Okay. Can cash deposits is part of reopening under section 148A and notice under section 148 for assessment year 2021 by Jao is valid?
सर अब देखिए, मुझे याद है कि मेरे ऑफिस से ही हुआ था केस वीर बहादुर सिंह सिजवाली, 68 SOT में रिपोर्टेड है ये केस. दिस वाज द फर्स्ट केस ऑन दिस पॉइंट that mere deposit of the cash in the bank account is not enough to issue notice or to record reason under section 148 that income has escaped assessment, because there can be many sources of the cash deposit. Mere factum of the deposit of cash is I mean cannot lead to the formation of belief escapement of income. लेकिन यदि एसएससी ने रिटर्न ही नहीं भरी है तो एक एबनॉर्मल अमाउंट का, एक अनयूजुअल बिग अमाउंट का कैश जमा है, तो कोर्ट्स ने ये कहा है कि ना इन सच ए सिचुएशन इट कैन लीड टू द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ बिलीफ आल्सो। लेकिन यदि एसएससी ने रिटर्न भरी हुई है देन मियर डिपॉजिट ऑफ कैश विद नथिंग मोर इन द रीजन रिकॉर्डेड कैन नॉट गिव हैंडल टू द असेसिंग ऑफिसर टू रीओपन द केस।
ओके सर। सीए संदीप कुमार जी ने पूछा है, कैन अंडर न्यू सेक्शन 148 assessing officer can make roving inquiries which are not connected with the information on basis of which notice has been issued?
Yes, as I said that once a case has been reopened, then the assessing officer's power to ask a question under section 142(1) is there. In fact, I remember in my early days of practice, I tried once this by not giving the information to the assessing officer on this premise. अरे भैया जो तुमने पूछा है, जो जिस केस के लिए तुमने खोला है वही मांगिएगा। तो मुझे ध्यान है कि मुझे अच्छी खासी पटकनी लग गई थी और वो प्रोसिक्यूशन भी लॉन्च कर दिया था। तो ये एक ऐसा वो है कि once an assessment has been reopened then it is reopened for all intents and purposes.
सर वो कहते हैं ना जी, who is to bell the cat?
हाँ
ऊंट के गले में घंटी कौन बांधे? डिपार्टमेंट को कौन चैलेंज करेगा?
सही बात है, सही बात है।
सर अमनदीप मेहता जी ने पूछा है, सर कंसीडरिंग द इंफॉर्मेशन व्हिच suggests that the income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment is exhaustively defined under explanation 1. How does the defense of borrowed satisfaction independent application of mind fare well in the new regime? That is, can the same be still argued if the AO has summarily passed a 148A(d) purely on basis of information received from RMS or on the basis of audit objection, despite contesting it in 148A(c)?
देखो, अब आपके इस प्रश्न में दो चीजें हैं। एक तो यह है कि क्या एसेसिंग ऑफिसर ने जो इंफॉर्मेशन रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी में लिखी हुई है उसके बेसिस पर नोटिस दे दिया, लेकिन आपने रिप्लाई भी तो दिया। रिप्लाई को कंसीडर करने के बाद यदि उसने 148 ऑर्डर पास किया है तो फिर थोड़ी बोरोड सेटिस्फेक्शन की बात है। हाँ, यदि उसने आपका रिप्लाई बिना कंसीडर किए हुए 148 का ऑर्डर पास कर दिया है तो भी बोरोड सेटिस्फेक्शन वाला नहीं लगेगा। तो ये लगेगा कि योर रिप्लाई विच हैज बीन गिवन बाय यू हैज नॉट बीन कंसीडर्ड which you are obliged to consider under section 148AC. So borrowed satisfaction, with everything is borrowed now, because when it has been exhaustively defined, your question itself says भाई उसको तो वहां से पिक करना है, अब तो वो तो borrowed होगा ही।
Sir, short issue. There's a circular which precedes the amendment. There's a 4th March 21 circular which lays out that 4th March of 21, sir. When it states that these are the potential cases, so there's an investigation report by DDIT which it says that will fall into the bracket of potential cases. Now, if there is an investigation, some search happened on some entity, let's just say in Sir Tamil Nadu, and then there's a DDIT ka investigation report on the basis of which a reassessment has been initiated on somebody in Delhi. I've been show cause.
Are you talking of old law or the new law?
New law, sir. New law.
न्यू लॉ,
so much to say,
यदि रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी में आता है
जी
मेहता साहब तो आता है,
राइट,
ठीक है।
ओके सर।
अग्रवाल
जी कह रहे हैं, सर आई हैव वन क्वेश्चन।
सोनू अग्रवाल जी ने बस यही कहा है, एक प्रश्न है तो लिखा नहीं है तो मुझसे अलग से पूछ लेंगे।
एडवोकेट मनीषकर जी, sir, can 148 and notice can be issued for information regarding withdrawal of cash more than 50 lakhs from saving account by the assessee but having no information on expenditure?
नहीं, withdrawal of cash from the bank account, how can it, I mean, यदि ये कोई रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी है तो बारी बात अलग है, लेकिन हम लोगों ने दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट में इवन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैलिडिटी हमने चैलेंज की हुई है कि इवन दैट इंफॉर्मेशन मस्ट नॉट बी इंफॉर्मेशन सिंप्लिसिटर, it must have some nexus with the belief of escapement of income. So withdrawal of cash from the bank I mean, cannot be, even if it is a part of risk management strategy. तो either you challenge the constitutional validity, otherwise तो फिर इंफॉर्मेशन है तो बोल सकता है, यदि ये रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी का पार्ट है तो।
सर ये पता नहीं अब एक्चुअली मनीष जी अगर हैं तो मतलब अगर आपको एक्चुअली ये इस पॉइंट के कारण नोटिस आया है तो आप बता सकते हैं,
हाँ,
या मतलब या
नहीं तो क्या रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी में 50 लाख से ऊपर कैश विड्रॉल करना इंफॉर्मेशन सजेस्टिंग एस्केपमेंट ऑफ इनकम है? मुझे तो इस पर ही डाउट है।
राइट 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 सर।
हाँ,
सर पुष्कल सोनी हमारे को कन्वीनर है, इन्होंने पूछा है सर इफ द असेसमेंट प्रोसीडिंग्स अंडर सेक्शन 148 इज रीओपन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर ड्यूरिंग सर्च प्रोसीडिंग्स,
हाँ।
whether such assessment proceedings is to be conducted in faceless manner or to be done by JAW.
देखो, दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट को छोड़ दो, बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट वगैरह ने तो कह दिया है, आपके पंजाब हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट ने भी कोई डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं रखा है इसका इस तरह से।
हाँ डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं रखा, राइट राइट
हाँ,
राइट।
तो अब ये
सर
डिपेंड
अदरवाइज
करता है किस हाई कोर्ट में हो।
सर अब ऐसा ना कि जैसे तो मतलब नॉर्मल केसेस में तो उन्होंने बोल दिया कि फेसलेस में करना था, लेकिन एक सर्कुलर है जिसमें मतलब सर्कुलर भी नहीं, जिसमें लिखा हुआ मतलब वैसे भी है कि जो 148 ए इशू तो इशू नहीं करना सर्च असेसमेंट के
हाँ, वो
केसेस
तो
में,
नहीं करना इशू,
तो फिर
लेकिन
वो तो इसका
लेकिन
मतलब
जाओ
जाओ
फाओ तो उससे अलग इशू हो गया ना भाई। नोटिस 148 का असेसमेंट करना 143(3) में, तो वो तो अब जाओ करेगा फाओ करेगा, मुद्दा तो ये है।
अब वही आपकी बात ठीक है कि पंजाब हरियाणा कोर्ट ने कोई डिस्टिंग्विश तो रखा
हाँ, वहां नहीं किया हुआ
नहीं।
है, तो इसलिए जब तक पंजाब हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट का दरबार खुला है तो करिएगा।
सर इसमें एक और इशू भी इसी में एक जो आ रहा था कि भाई
हाँ,
जैसे जो सर्च केसेस में जो रीओपन हो गए, तो
हाँ,
वैसे तो वो सेंटर सर्कल में ही होने केसेस,
हाँ।
पर लेकिन जो डायरेक्टली रिलेटेड टू सर्च इंडिविजुअल्स नहीं है उनके केसेस तो इन्होंने वो एग्जम्पशन एक्सेप्शन में इशू कर दिया, 148 ए के नहीं दिए, सीधा 148 कर दिया।
ठीक है।
लेकिन उसके बाद वो सेंटर सर्कल में तो भेजे नहीं केसेस, वो केसेस तो
हाँ,
फेसलेस में भेज दिए।
हाँ,
ये भी एक इशू है ना,
ये भी इशू है, ये भी
ये
है।
जो ओमेक्स के केसेस है उसमें भी ये इशू है, क्योंकि उसमें
हाँ,
तो देयर आर प्लेथरा ऑफ केसेस जो उन्होंने जो डायरेक्टली रिलेटेड टू सर्च पार्टी नहीं है
हाँ,
वो ओपन तो कर दिए सर्च केसेस के जैसे,
हाँ, हाँ जी।
लेकिन उसके बाद वो फेसलेस में भेज दिए, सेंटर सर्कल में थोड़ा ना भेजे।
हाँ, तो
तो
अब
फिर
ये
इसमें कुछ है कमेंट?
ये फेसलेस में ही होंगे भाई वो।
फेसलेस में होंगे, फिर
हाँ,
148 ए होना चाहिए था सर,
नहीं, 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 नहीं,
क्योंकि
क्योंकि
कुछ केसेस में उन्होंने 148 ए किया है और
चलो
कुछ में
वो
नहीं किया।
वो एक अलग चीज है, किया है। देयर कैन नॉट बी इक्विटी इन सच ए केस।
उसी सर्च केस को रिलेटेड कुछ असेसिस को 148 ए आया है और कुछ को सिर्फ सीधा 148 आया है,
चलो
लेकिन वो
148 ए आ गया तो कुछ आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी दे दी उन्होंने, ये मान लो पहले।
वो तो हो गया। अब जिसमें एज अ सर्च केस ओपन किया 148 ए नहीं आया, वो भी बाद में फेसलेस में भेज दिए,
हाँ,
तो
तो
सेंटर सर्कल में तो भेजे नहीं,
नहीं, फाओ को भेजे होंगे, फेसलेस
अफवाह
को।
को भेज दिए पर 148 ए के बगैर ही भेज दिए फिर।
हाँ, कोई बात नहीं, उसमें कोई बात नहीं
नहीं वो चैलेंज हो सकता है हाईकोर्ट में।
ना।
अच्छा
हाँ,
सर हमने इसमें कहा कि ये हमारा ज्यूरिसडिक्शनल हाई कोर्ट कहता है कि फेसलेस में ही करना है, तो इसका
हाँ,
मतलब लास्ट जो असेसमेंट कंक्लूड हुई है वो तो वो
हाँ।
फेसलेस वालों ने ज्यूरिसडिक्शनल वालों को ट्रांसफर कर दिया।
नहीं,
जो
पार्डन
लास्ट
दोबारा बताइए सर।
सर
सर ये
लास्ट
फोर्थ केस है,
वाले
पुष्कल
जो
एक
केस
मिनट
है,
सर, ये फर्दर है,
एक
पुष्कल एक
एक
मिनट,
करके सर, एक एक करके सर, एक एक
हाँ
करके।
तो
हाँ,
मैं इन्हीं को एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ। पुष्कल एक मिनट सर, ये एक नेक्स्ट स्टेप है,
हाँ,
तो जो हमने पहले डिस्कस किया वो तो हो गया। अब
हाँ,
लास्ट ईयर इन्होंने क्या किया, जो फेसलेस को भेज दिए,
हाँ।
उसके बाद जनवरी में इन्होंने फेसलेस ने वो केसेस दोबारा से जॉ को भेज दिए।
अब आपने वहां ऑब्जेक्शन लिया होगा।
अब पुष्कल आप इसको आगे एक्सप्लेन कर दे यार।
अब सर अब इसमें ऑब्जेक्शन तो नहीं लिया, अब असेसमेंट उन्होंने कईयों केस में ऐड कर दिए, कईयों में एक्सप्लेन हो गया। अब
हाँ,
इसका क्या लीगल पोजीशन रहेगा सर आज की डेट में, अब क्या करें अपील?
अब जब ये वो जब जाओ के पास चला गया, मतलब फाओ पहले फेसलेस में था, फिर जाओ के पास
हाँ
गया है।
जाओ
हाँ जी,
पहले पहले जाओ ने रीओपन किया,
हाँ,
रीओपन होने के बाद फेस रिटर्न फाइल किया, फेसलेस में चला गया,
हाँ,
और उसके बाद फ्लैग एंड में जुरी में जाके केस उन्होंने बल्क में,
हाँ।
स्पेशली ओमेक्स वाले, ये ओमेक्स से रिलेटेड टाइप जो सर्च के अंदर
तो
थे,
आप पंजाब हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट में तो चले जाओ, अभी तो जस्टिस शर्मा है वहां पे, तो मिल जाएगा,
अब
मिलेगा।
उस केस में ऑर्डर पास हो चुके हैं,
हाँ, तो
वो लास्ट ईयर के केसेस हैं।
फिर
लास्ट
भी
ईयर
जा
के
सकते हो,
ऑर्डर
ऑर्डर
पास हो
पास।
चुके हैं।
हाँ, तो जा सकते हो इस ग्राउंड पे कि साहब लैक ऑफ ज्यूरिसडिक्शन है।
तो रिट चली जाएगी
बट
सर।
सर
हाँ,
हो गया कि एक्चुअल पोजीशन क्या है?
सर एक्चुअल पोजीशन तो बड़ी फ्लूइड है, आपके हाई कोर्ट में मिल रहे हैं तो आप ले लो। अदरवाइज तो जैसे आर्टिकल 142 आशीष अग्रवाल हुआ है ना, तो कुछ भी हो सकता है।
कुछ भी हो सकता है।
हाँ,
सर,
नेक्स्ट सर, नेक्स्ट।
reopening by Jao for cash sales deposit of 1 crore by milk seller is valid. No return is filed. ये पूछना चाह रहे हैं कुछ?
नहीं, वो हितेश जी, रीओपनिंग बाय जेओ अंडर ओल्ड लॉ, न्यू लॉ, ये भी इम्पोर्टेंट है ना। बिकॉज अब किसी आदमी की इनकम, मतलब अब वो कोई रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी से आई है या पुराने लॉ में है, जब तक ये नहीं मालूम पड़ेगा तो कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा।
चलो,
हाँ,
अगर वो है लाइन पे तो आ जाएंगे, नहीं तो नेक्स्ट चलते हैं अभी।
ठीक है।
If cash deposit is much more than ITR filed, then can it be reason for reopening? ये पूछना चाह रहे हैं।
देखिए, रीजन फॉर रीओपनिंग अंडर द ओल्ड लॉ तो हो ही जाता है, और नए लॉ में भी यदि रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी में तो हो जाएगा।
Sir, case not case not directly related to search assessment is being done by JAO, not in faceless manner.
यस यस, इट कैन बी कंटेस्टेड।
तो वो सेम क्वेश्चन ही हो गया जो भी हमने पूछा
हाँ।
था, तो उसी से रिलेटेड हो गया।
हाँ,
So I think these are the questions that were there in the
हाँ।
chat box. So any other question if any member would like to ask?
हितेश भाई ने कुछ लिखा है, कैश डिपॉजिट अंडर द न्यू लॉ इन फाइनेंस 2021 फॉर अर्लियर क्वेश्चन
Question.
अंडर। हितेश जी का क्या क्वेश्चन था? रीओपनिंग जेओ फॉर कैश सेल डिपॉजिट 1 करोड़ बाय मिल्क सेलर इज वैलिड। तो देखो, मेरे ख्याल में, मुझे ध्यान है, रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी में कुछ इस तरह का है कि हैवी कैश डिपॉजिट बियॉन्ड ए पर्टिकुलर थ्रेशोल्ड है, तो उन्होंने उसको रिस्क स्ट्रेटेजी माना है, तो उसके बेसिस पे यदि है, आरएमएस के बेसिस पे, तो ठीक है।
और वैसे भी 1 करोड़ के ऊपर अगर सेल है तो वो टैक्स ऑडिट में भी कवर हो जाएगा। अगर 8% लगाएं तो 8 लाख इनकम हो जाएगी।
हाँ, ठीक है।
टैक्सेबल तो है ही है, निकल
सही है।
केस तो लग सकता है जी।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
वन क्वेरी
सर, इसमें एक फौजाओं में क्वेश्चन है कि भाई जैसे पंजाब हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट ने क्वैश कर दिए नोटिस।
जी।
अब सपोज सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सपोज करो 3 तरह के डिसीजन आ सकते हैं। एक है कि बिल्कुल एसएससी के
स्पेकुलेटिव बात नहीं करते हैं।
ओके
हाँ,
सर,
we'll
अगर
cross the bridge when it comes.
राइट सर।
I am there, sir.
148 सर्च के अंदर इंफॉर्मेशन रेफर के लिए रीओपन हुआ, उसके साथ 151 की सैंक्शन नहीं आती, क्या ये उनको ऑब्जेक्शन हो सकता है?
हाँ, नहीं, वो आप मांगिए उनसे, वो दे देंगे आप।
बट 148 के साथ देना मैंडेटरी तो नहीं है?
ऐसे मैंडेटरी करके कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं है, ठीक है ना। क्या सुनील दत्त साहब का और क्या क्या रेफर टू क्वेरी
उन्होंने ऊपर एक क्वेरी पूछी थी जिसमें हमने बोला था कि हम कॉन्टेस्ट कर सकते हैं। तो वो पूछ रहे कि अगर डिपार्टमेंट अगर सपोज करो कैन दे रीइशू इट अंडर फेसलेस कि भाई वो
व्हाई नॉट, व्हाई नॉट, व्हाई नॉट,
इफ टाइम लिमिट इज देयर।
इफ टाइम लिमिट इज देयर, यस। तो इसीलिए कब कौन सी चीज कहाँ कहनी है, कैसे कहनी है, बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होती है ये।
राइट।
हाँ।
तो members, any other question?
Members can raise their hand, we will unmute them.
सर आप खत्म करें सर, मुझे एक शादी में जाना है, प्लीज।
ठीक है अरुण जी।
Mohit, please conclude the.
जी अरुण जी, for you for the concluding remarks and the vote of thanks.
Okay, sir, it's my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to our distinguished guest speaker, CA Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji, for his enlightening session on Section 148. Sir, your profound knowledge and engaging delivery have made this session immensely valuable for all of us, sir. Today is even more important and special as we congratulate sir on being honored by Chief Justice of India, Honorable Chief Justice of India.
Really,
it's a testament.
It was such gratifying.
Right,
I
sir, right.
met after a very long time to him, and he recognized, "Well, Dr. Gupta, how are you?"
Okay,
and yes, I know you very well. You used to appear before, because he was from the Delhi High Court. So
right. It's testament to your unparalleled expertise.
नहीं sir. This was his nicety and greatness. I am too small a person, I mean, before him.
Sir, on behalf of DTB, I extend our deepest gratitude for taking the time to share your wisdom with us for today. I would also like this moment to sincerely thank our audience for their active participation and thought-provoking questions.
सर, एक क्वेश्चन लोग पूछ रहे हैं मुझसे कि क्या ये YouTube पे होगा क्या ये?
Yes, sir, yes.
अच्छा,
सर हम YouTube को अपलोड करेंगे।
हाँ, अपलोड करके मुझे आप लिंक भेज देना।
Right, sir, right. Thank you, sir, once again
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
enriching and experience and inspiring all of us. Thank you, sir. We look forward to have you again here with
Thank you.
our bar. Thank you, sir.